Hello, I'm Dick Foth, and I'd like to welcome you to Known, stories to make sense of it all. And these stories are what I call walking books, real-life people from different places, different ages, different cultures, and I want to have some conversations with them across disciplines and generations and cultures in order to encourage a kind of knowing, fresh lenses through which to see the world. One of those lenses will be Scripture, or more specifically, Jesus of Nazareth, whose life, I believe, changed the course of the history of the world. So, thanks for listening in. Great to have you with us. It is fall 2018, and we are on the cusp of midterm elections. What a better time to do some history. For this podcast, I want to take us back to the roots of the Republic. I'm on the East Coast for this conversation in the great state of Virginia. I'm with a couple of friends, and these friends both come from business corporate families in New Jersey, but they settled in Charlottesville, Virginia. One became a businessman, the other became a pastor, these two gentlemen I'm speaking with. And I just find this particular conversation fascinating, not only because of who I'm speaking to, but the conditions were a bit blustery and windy that day in the springtime in Virginia, and there were school children around, and so you really have to listen up for this one because there's a lot of ambient noise, but it's real life. So here we go. I'm standing on the portico, in the portico of Monticello, Charlottesville, Virginia, the home of Thomas Jefferson. If you look on the back of a nickel coin, you'll see the building. That's where we are. And I'm here with two good friends, Peter Hartwig and Peter Sorensen, who live here. Boys, say hello.
Hello there.
Hi, Dick.
And Peter Hartwig and Peter Sorensen have been in this area for a number of years, a bunch of years. And but both of you grew up in another place. I'm going to call you Hartwig and Sorensen, just so our listeners have a chance. So Hartwig,
that'll work for us.
Where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up on a farm in Neenah, Wisconsin, and then in my teenage years ended up in New Jersey.
Okay.
I grew up in Morristown, New Jersey, Dick, where my dad worked on Wall Street, and I was raised.
Okay, so you got a Wall Street dad. Your dad was in...
My dad was a corporate exec in the pulp and paper industry.
Okay, and now here you are in Charlottesville, Virginia. By the way, it's raining. We got school kids running around, so this is real life. It is springtime, by the way, in Monticello. I can look across the lawn and see tulips and flowering dogwoods, and it's spectacular. And it's just the place to be on a wonderful Saturday afternoon. So, here we are in Jefferson's home, this unique place where he used every square inch. He was a farmer, he was a mathematician, he was a politician. What else did he do?
Well, he was also an architect. He drew the house and he had it built.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, he was an architect for our country, our government.
What did he do?
Well, he wrote the
test. This is a test for all of you listening.
Well, he wrote the Declaration of Independence, which is a beloved document literally around the world. Governments around the world have been founded on that document.
So when he built this, he talked a couple of his buddies into coming here. Is that right? I mean, in terms of living not far away.
That's correct. He had two very close friends in politics, and they actually all wanted to live near each other. One day's stagecoach ride away was the goal, and they actually achieved that goal.
Yeah, so James Madison and James Monroe were both his dear friends and neighbors.
Isn't that it? And is it true? Did we hear on our little tour today that the daughter or granddaughter named her children after those?
Correct.
Folks? So James Madison Randolph.
That's
James
right.
Monroe Randolph.
Yes,
that's right. That's right.
This is my curiosity working for. How far is a day's stagecoach?
Well, what's Ashlawn is right past Monticello, so that's within
10 miles.
Yeah,
okay.
Way within 10 miles.
Okay.
And then the name of the other house is
Montpelier,
and that's Oh, that's quite a ways further.
That's a little further,
That's
yes.
probably 25 miles from here, something like that. Yeah.
So here we are in a place that is redolent with the roots of liberty, if I could be so
That's
sort of
true.
wax poetic.
Very true.
And yet when he died and they had to sell off part of his estate, 130 slaves were sold. How do we put this together? This good man, with a good man in the sense of good thinker. He was a son of the Enlightenment, if you will, and all of these things. And he was not necessarily a person of faith particularly, but he respected people of faith. Do I have that right? Or is that?
You do. No, I mean, even as you look through his home, there are pictures that depict different Bible scenes in his home, which are pretty amazing. But if you read the Jefferson Bible, it ends with them rolling the stone in front of the tomb. And every picture he has in his home that is faith-based is before the resurrection. Nothing after.
And he took the miracles out of the gospel.
He did. That's what he did.
So you have this complicated,
That's right.
multifaceted man.
Yes.
I know a lot of people like that.
Well,
I think all of us are pretty complicated. But so let me go back to, here's this person who's a thinker, an explorer intellectually and governmentally and agriculturally and all of this stuff. But he doesn't call up his two buddies, but he talks to his two friends and says, I need you to be within a day's stagecoach ride.
That's right.
Why do you think he would do that? Any?
There's little doubt that Jefferson was a people person. And even after he retired as president, Monticello saw literally hundreds and hundreds of guests that would come up here to sit at his table. And it's very obvious that Jefferson loved people and he valued relationship highly.
Well, and his two close friends here obviously ended up as president as well. And so he obviously felt like he needed to have a hand in the formation of the government and the continuation of the American government. So he felt responsible, I think, in that way.
So talk to me just a bit about friendship. As you know, this idea of friendship is sort of central to how Ruth and I have thought about things for a long time. What does friendship do? Because well, first of all, how did you guys meet? You're both here in Charlottesville now, but.
Sure. Well, I've served as a local church pastor here at City Church for the past 20 years.
Okay.
And about 10 years ago, Peter and Victoria Sorensen literally in a lot of ways just walked into my life, being that I had been at Princeton and then Peter had been from New Jersey. We had a lot of commonality. And so when he kind of showed up at the church, we became very fast friends.
So you became fast friends.
Yes.
Sorensen, tell me, you're a businessman. He's a pastor. Tell me why you like him.
Well, I think Pete Hartwig is a very unique pastor, and I've grown up in the church. I was an infant in the church, and I've met so many pastors who are dear and literally beloved friends. But the ones that I've been so close to and most close to have been ones that have wanted to impact their community, and that really is Pete Hartwig. Here's a man who almost spends no time in a church office and spends every day out in the community, having lunch with people, sitting in coffee shops with people, just conversing and bringing ministry to the street. And that's where my heart is. I want to impact my world. I don't want to just pass through and end up in a grave somewhere having not touched those around me.
A lot of times in a community, the people who get, quote, left out of these kinds of conversations
Yes.
oftentimes are the people who are what we might call high-end people.
We call them the 1%, right?
1% is that those folks who've made it in other people's eyes. But oftentimes that making it puts you out in an ozone layer where you don't have relationships. And sometimes guys like you, Hartwig, are afraid of people like that because they're,
right.
they got resources and I'm not, and all of that
Sure.
kind of stuff.
Sure.
Why aren't you afraid of people like that?
Well, One of the reasons was I served as a chaplain at Princeton, and so
Okay.
if I was afraid of them, I probably wouldn't have done much. But no, I think coming here to Charlottesville, my children, we felt led to enroll my children in an elite prep school here in Charlottesville. What I found out very quickly was there was no chaplain at the school, and I think my son was the only one who had faith in his entire grade. And so being there, we began to have a heart for these one percenters who really had no faith at all. They weren't willing to go to church. And that's when Peter Sorensen kind of walked into my life 10 years ago. And he had done ministry on Wall Street with Executive Ministries, and his father had really kind of paved the trail for him along those ends. And so then, Peter, you and I met 10 years ago, and we kind of sat down and began to look over the landscape of Charlottesville, and we began to talk about what we would do.
Yeah, I mean, Art and Nancy DeMoss had a very vibrant ministry outside of Philadelphia, and they termed their neighbors the up and outers rather than those who were down and out.
How long ago would this be?
This was 30 years ago,
Okay.
Plus or minus. They would have a dinner in their backyard for 1,000 people.
Holy cow.
And so Art DeMoss, they were extremely wealthy people, and he. People have told me that at the end of these dinners that they would do, they would give him their name tag if they responded, if they
Okay.
wanted. And he was almost begging people as they were leaving, please, tell me
if
you
they
want more.
So if they wanted to have a discussion on faith, if they
Correct.
wanted to learn
Yes.
more about Bible or Jesus or just anything, the journey, that helped facilitate that process.
And
Is
he
that
was,
fair to
and
say?
he and his wife were unashamed.
Isn't
I mean,
that
they were
Yeah.
very bold in their faith, and
Yeah.
so I was actually emboldened by that and by the ministry my parents did. And so at the end of the day, you really have to think through what is most important. Is it your image in the culture, in the community, or is it the fact that you represent Jesus and you may be that one person to minister to these individuals?
So here we are in Charlottesville.
Yes.
Last evening, I went with you to the country club, and a couple of hundred folks, couples there, and you had advertised this thing about keys to marriage or whatever it was. And I've had the privilege of being here before, but I always tell the folks here, I'm a kid from East Oakland, California. I'm not a blue blood. I wasn't raised, I didn't graduate from a real name school and all that sort of thing. So for me, over the years, to sort of learn how to engage folks in a different strata, I think that's fair
That's
to say.
fair, yes.
Has been more of a challenge. But to see you guys just naturally move about and do stuff was just a hoot. I really like that. And this idea of the Faith and Leadership Forum, part of it, I think this is correct,
Right.
was part of it sparked when you came to the National Prayer Breakfast
It was.
some years ago.
Absolutely right.
And you brought your chief of police
Yes.
from here.
That's right.
And then from there, you said, okay, how do we add to this?
Right.
Is that right?
That's very accurate. So, Dick, you invited my wife, Fran, and the two of us went with Chief Longo and his wife. And I remember coming back from that, just looking at the National Prayer Breakfast. I humbly felt like it was the best evangelistic outreach I'd ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of them. And so coming back...
But they don't see it that way. They don't see it as sort of like, this is not a Billy Graham.
No,
deal.
not even the least. I mean,
Yeah.
it was all relationally driven.
Okay.
It was really kind of the modality of ministry that suits me well. And then coming back, begin to pray about it. And not long after that, Peter and Victoria Sorensen kind of strolled into my life. Peter had a history with the 1%, and that was sort of the area I felt uniquely called to. And so we kind of teamed up. And what we did originally, we brought in a vice president of Disney and had him give just to talk on faith and work, and we probably had about 100+ people that just came to hear about that. We went into our Rolodex and found people that we knew were outside of faith, and our agreement was we would have a 3-week follow-up about Jesus.
What does that mean?
Well,
3-week follow-up.
they listened to Al Weiss, and there were cards on the table, and if
Al
they...
Weiss is the Disney guy?
Yes, exactly. And so what ended up happening was if they filled out a card, we would meet with them for 3 more weeks to talk about Jesus. And we're now into
year number 8.
we're into year 8. So 3 weeks grew into 8 years of this.
Okay.
Yes. So
And you guys meet, and now there are men's and women's meeting groups that have organically grown out of
Correct.
that effort, where
Yep.
people meet. essentially to talk about the journey. At that moment, by journey, I understood that to be, if there is a God, is he real? How does that affect my life, my relationships, my career, my view of the world? And so I just posed the question to them. Do I have that right?
You do. And so that one group has now grown into 5 groups. 3 of them are men's groups, 2 are women's groups. And I can tell you the most typical response we have gotten is a man, and heard one recently, a man who said, you know what, I grew up in a church, I have never heard any of this, and I'm going to have to rethink my entire life. And it's all to the positive, because we've opened doors that he's never had opened in his heart.
So when you say I've never heard any of this, what is this?
The fact that Jesus, the Christian faith, is something that is not only true, but it's normative and something that informs every other area of life. Okay. For a lot of people who've grown up in a cultural faith, it's really just a Sunday exercise.
Sure.
And it's a polite exercise, and you come to church with your suit on, and you greet your peers, and that's it. And it ends on Sunday as you walk out of the church. That's the end of it.
Sure.
And what we've told these people, and Pete has done a masterful job of teaching, is that Jesus touches every area of your life every day, every hour of every day.
So you're doing this as friends?
We are,
very much so. In fact, our families are extremely close. We vacation together. I'll come out and his daughters will be asleep in a room in my house, vice versa. So we've just become extremely close friends.
Well, this is generational, too.
It is, very much so.
I'm going to call another member in. This is Peter Hartwig II. I call him Peter the Tooth. And say hi to the friends, Peter.
Hello, friends.
There they are.
They're my friends.
They're
Look
your
at
friends
them.
already. Look at them all. And Peter is, how old are you?
22.
22. So you've lived hardly any of life.
Very full-heartedly life.
But I had the privilege of meeting Peter a few years back when he was younger than 22, and we've become friends. He's accepted me as a 75-year-old whatever. But Peter, you've watched this, what I've just described. Now, you've just graduated from University of Virginia. You're going to Cambridge in the fall. So you're going to go over there to be British and learn, think deep thoughts and all of that. But you've watched this friendship. You've watched this engagement in the city and around. What are your thoughts? Just toss some out there as to how you assess it, how it's impacted you, if at all.
Well, I think so. I was told that the most you'll change in life are the first 6 months of college and the first 6 months after college. And most of my friends, their first 6 months after college have been working a bajillion hours a week consulting in D.C., or they're trying to use their history degree or something. And I've had the weirdest first 6 months after college of anybody I know. I hang out with 50 to 70-year-olds 3 mornings a week and eat breakfast.
You're strange.
I'm an odd guy, but odd guys make great fake grandkids, evidently. So
at that point, we got interrupted by a group of folks. I think there was a squall, and they came into the portico at Monticello where we were standing, and so we had to sort of abbreviate the conversation. What we're going to do is we're going to pick up that conversation in our next podcast. So hold that thought about a young guy working with older guys and what that means for the cross-generational conversation about life, about faith, and anything else they want to talk about. So we'll see you then.